Hey Lee, good to see you.
Hey Clay, lovely to see you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Investing Out of State with a Data-Driven Strategy. We are so grateful that you're here. For everyone that's here, if you wouldn't mind just popping into the chat and telling us where you're tuning in from, I'd love to know where everybody is. If you don't know how to get the chat, you just click on more on Zoom. All right, we got Brooklyn, Santa Cruz, Alaska. Oh, nice. San Antonio, awesome. Redwood City, amazing. So cool. So cool to see where everybody's at. Thank you guys so much for being here. We really, really appreciate it. So let's just jump straight in. Um, so What we're here to do today is to help you build a better real estate portfolio with data. VestMap helps you build a better real estate portfolio faster because the faster you can screen properties, the more opportunities you can find. So we want to help you vet more real estate so you can ultimately buy more real estate. Um, and at VestMap, we want to empower investors with data to make better decisions faster because that's what you need to do. So you can think of VestMap like a little magnet that's going to help you find your ideal investment properties. And as we were making these slides, Lee yesterday was like, yeah, I just vetted like 40 properties in 30 minutes, so like the speed of being able to do this is super, super important. So as soon as somebody finds out that we run VestMap, the first thing that they ask us is like, should I buy this property? They send us a property like, is this a good property to buy? It's the number one question we get asked. And when you're looking at properties, you're probably doing a cash flow calculation right now, which is great. But just remember two things. One, there's no good or bad property. There are properties that meet your criteria and those that don't. And secondly, location, 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 not cash flow, cash flow, cash flow. And we're going to talk about this more in a second. So first we want to start with the location, and then we want to dive into the property in more detail. So you wouldn't buy a stock without researching the company first, and you shouldn't buy a house without researching the area and understanding the numbers that are going to make that cash flow calculation actually become a reality. So to fully analyze a property now and in the future, you have to understand the area around it. But there's so much out there. As you start doing this and Googling around, you can suddenly start getting overwhelmed with the amount of data and graphs and stuff. And you're wondering, is this stuff actually important? Does it matter? And will it help me ultimately build a better real estate portfolio and make more money? So the answer to that is definitely yes. And no, you don't need to become a mapping expert to do this. What you need is a system. And the system that Lee actually developed is called discern. Demographics, income, schools, crime, expansion, rent, and neighborhoods. So this is 7 key location data points that is going to help you vet and know if a property actually is a good idea or not. So Lee, do you want to talk a little bit more about the discern method and how you came up with it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I started investing out of state about 4 years ago, and I just remember thinking, I would say, oh, maybe I could buy this property, and then what do? You like drive by it and you look at the cars, like what are you really, really looking for? And so I kind of narrowed down to these 7 things that you really want to know about a location. We'll go into more detail about each one of them, but just this quick snapshot, like give me like the 30-second view of would I buy this location? And if I
Right,
would buy this location, okay, well then what does the property look like?
right. So this is the data-driven way to invest. And this is what we're going to actually show you on this presentation today, is show you how we do it and how you can actually use this data to make data-driven decisions faster. So the first thing to do is to actually start with the area and identify zip codes where you want to invest. And we have a way to help you do that. You're going to source properties and actually match them up against the discern criteria and see if they meet your investing criteria. And then you're going to be able to buy with confidence and with data. So number two question we get asked, when you say, Lee, is
Yeah.
where should I invest? Like, where's the best place to buy properties right now? Um, so you were telling me something interesting that I actually didn't really fully understand about cash flow. Did you want to talk more about, how cash flow actually, high cash flow isn't always a good thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's, this in real estate, everyone wants a cash flow positive property, right? Like you want a property that's going to put money in your pocket every month instead of taking money out of your pocket. But then you get into this thing where because you want a cash flow positive property does not necessarily mean that you want the most cash flow. So it's like this flawed extrapolation. So, I'll tell you, if someone says to me, hey, like I want the highest cash flow market, and I'm like, great, I know exactly the highest cash flow market for you. Are you ready? It is Flint, Michigan. It is the highest cash flow market in the United States. Why? Because people are fleeing it in droves. It has contaminated water. And next, Cleveland, negative population. So it's really really important to understand that although you want a cash flow positive property, the highest cash flow property is often going to be the highest risk property. And it may have very high cash flow on paper every month, but your overall ROI may not be as good as a property that's in a, expanding location. I
Right.
mean, you know, fast forward 3 years in Flint, do you think we're going to be experiencing massive um, population growth? I'm going to go with no. So,
Right, which is how you came up with this idea of the affordable B class rentals. So it's a MSA with a major airport within 50 miles because you're probably going to have to go there. Population of at least 150,000 because, and with a minimum of 3,000 housing units because you need available stock to actually purchase. A median home value between $100,000 and $250,000, household income of $30,000, and a forecasted population great growth rate greater than zero. So if these are the kinds of areas that we want to invest in, not the Flint, Michigans and the Cleveland, Ohios of the world, probably. Um, and how do we find all of the properties that actually match this criteria? Well, good news, we actually did it for you. And we're actually super excited to share this with you guys. It's called the B Class Rental Property Map. And it is absolute solid gold to any investor. You can just pick a zip and start sourcing properties. So this is the map that we personally use to source properties. And we're actually going to come back to this map at the end. So stay tuned. But I actually want to give you guys just like a little demo of the B class property map. So this is how it actually works. And you can see that you can actually zoom in and drill down into all these little sub-markets. Is there anything else that you wanted to say about this while we're looking at it, Lee? Other than
no,
it's really
just
cool.
yeah, that, just having this narrow focus, being able to say, hey, here's the entire United States, right? A lot of times people say, well, I could invest anywhere, what's the best place? Well, these are really the criteria that I believe to be a great affordable place to buy rental properties. And
Right.
so just being able to see those zip codes, it's huge, right? Um, so anyway, I'm just really excited about it. It took me a long time to figure out how to create it, so I'm really excited to share it with everyone.
Yeah, Lee's definitely very excited about that one. So definitely stay till the end because we're going to show you how you can actually access that. But before we get into that, a little bit about us and why you should maybe trust us with your real estate advice. So Lee quit her job as a biologist when she sold her first deal for more than her six-figure salary. That's a true story. I actually remember when Lee called me and was like, I'm getting out of this biology game because I just sold one property for more than I made last year. 4 years later, Lee currently holds 59 rental doors and has transacted over $60 million in real estate and has turned her products or her methods into a product for others to use called VestMap, which is what you're here to learn about today. My name is Clay. I'm an entrepreneur with a background in software, and I joined up with Lee to help build out the technical side of VestMap. And yes, I am Lee's brother. Lee has been recognized for her innovative data-driven approach, and she was on some amazing podcasts like the Bigger Pockets podcast, which I highly recommend that you listen to because it's a great interview. So why did you create VestMap, Lee? Why don't you take this one?
Yeah, so if you guys have heard my story, I basically took the traditional path, right? Like I went to college. I always liked math and science, and so I became a biologist, and I got my graduate degree, and I worked in corporate America doing biology work, and then I worked for a startup. So I had done a lot of different things, and at the end of all of that, my net worth was zero. And I just remember coming home and saying, like, this is just a zero sum game. Like, I need the time to go and live my life. And I just felt like all jobs were dead end jobs, even, high paying ones. And so I really just had that gift of desperation that I needed to do something else. But I was in a very, very high priced market at the time, and everything I was analyzing had negative cash flow, and I couldn't figure out how to get started. I was in San Diego, and then I later moved to LA. So I was in these very, very high priced coastal California markets. And so I picked, I Googled, like, this is my true story. I Googled the top 10 cash flowing markets in the United States, and I picked Kansas City, and I flew there, and I came home with a property under contract. But while I was there, I was driving around and I was looking for this path of progress, And I just thought there's got to be a better way to do this than me getting in a car, like getting on a plane, getting in a car, driving around and being like, not it, not it, not it. And then
Right.
you get to these areas and it's like, people say, like, oh, look at the cars. And you're like, well, what am I looking for? Like, you don't understand really what you're looking for. But anyway, I was able to do it. And yeah, and now I am like, I I am
Doing it
free. I
full
was
time.
able to, yeah, I do it full time, and
Yeah,
I was able to quit my full-time job. So
that's
I'm
amazing.
thrilled about that. Yeah.
And you created the tool that you wish that you would have had in VestMap.
Yeah, I had actually been wanting to do this. I've been talking about it for years, right, Clay?
Yes,
Um,
very true.
and when it was COVID, when COVID hit, I was like, well, we all could just be dead here in, a year or so. I better, just
Better get
live
on
my
that VestMap.
dreams. Yeah, I've been talking about it. It's time to do it. So,
No time like the present. So with that, so let's drill down into the nuts and bolts of how the discern method actually works. So um, and how you can start using it. So we're going to show you that right now. So demographics, income, schools, crime, expansion, rent, and neighborhoods. So if you can have an understanding of these 7 data points, you're going to understand a lot more about the areas that you are investing in. So this is what we like to call a foolproof way to vet investment properties, because you can analyze a property in like 30 seconds and you check the same 7 key data points for every property you evaluate. So it gives you a frame of reference to make sense of these numbers, because you start to look at the same numbers over and over and over again. Now, before we continue and jump into the data portion of the presentation, I want to just say a little word about data. And we have 3 rules of data-driven investing that we've come up with. Only look at data you can actually use. The data that we present and use and the products that we use are to help you buy more real estate. So it's not to confuse you and overwhelm you. It's to help you buy more real estate and keep it simple. Pick a source of data and stick to it. I can confidently say that VestMap has the most accurate data that you're going to find, but you could probably find another source that would contradict it. I wouldn't let that deter you, because you just need to pick a source of data and stick to it and always reference the same one. And finally, don't let data stop you from doing deals, second guess yourself, or otherwise sabotage your mindset. Mindset is so important in any entrepreneurial venture, including real estate. So that being said, the other quick note before we drop into this is just a note about blocks, tracts, and zips. We're going to talk about this in a bit more detail, but all you really need to know is a block is the smallest unit, and it has between 600 and 3,000 people. A tract is a collection of blocks that has maybe 4,000 people, and then already know what a zip code is. And within VestMap, you'll be able to look at blocks, tracts, zips, county, state, and nationals to make sense of the numbers that we're going to show you. So let's jump in. So the first one is demographics. And we were talking about this one, and Lee, you were saying it's kind of like a really good way to get a feel for actually who lives in your neighborhood or who's going to live in your building.
Yeah, exactly. So, Tapestry, so we license a variety of data sources, and one of them is called Esri. And basically, they went through and did this huge demographic analysis. And Tapestry, they split up, all the people who live in the United States into like 64 demographic groups. And, if you sign up for VestMap or you go and check it out, look up your own address and you can actually read about the demographic group for where you live. And if you're anything like me, it is absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
And Clay's looked his up. And so it just gives you a feel, I like to look at it to understand, the occupations of people who live in this area. And yeah, just like their median household income, and just kind of gives you a feel for who lives there, and it's quite accurate. So
Yep. Cool. So moving on to the second indicator, which is income. This one is kind of like the 80-20 rule, right? This one's super important.
yeah, I mean, people are going to be renting your rental property, right? Like this is mostly geared towards rental property investing.
Right.
And so they're going to be renting your rental property, so they have to have enough money to be able to afford your rents. So, I usually am targeting rents between 750 and 950 per month. And so basically, someone needs to make 3 times that monthly rent to be able to live in one of my rental units. So for me, the median income cutoff is going to be around $27,000 a year, because then they're not going to be able to afford the rent. So,
Right.
income is correlated with a whole host of things. And again, like I never want to say that an area is good or bad. It's just it meets your investing criteria or it doesn't. If you have like a Section 8 strategy and the median income is $10,000 a year, great, that'll totally work. If you have a market rate strategy and you want to charge people, $1,500 per month and the median income is $10,000 a year, there's probably going to be a disconnect there. So you just want to make sure that you're aligning on that.
Right. Right. And then one thing to note about these maps and looking at this is modified census data. And you can see that the income actually changes drastically just a few blocks away. So the granularity of this report is really, really important for a specific address. If you're just looking at a whole city median income, that's not going to give you a good idea about that specific income in that specific area, right? Okay, schools.
Yeah, so schools, not everyone has school-aged children, but school ratings are, important to look at. They can be just a measure of kind of, the demand and who lives in the area. I tend to target, maybe like middle of the road school ratings, like not the worst, but not the best. So, they're just another kind of data point to understand a location. Like how are the schools rated
Right.
there?
If you're planning to rent to families with kids, for example, that's going to be a very important factor for your tenants. So just knowing who your tenants are and if this matters to them should figure into your strategy. Crime.
So crime, I think that in higher crime areas, I do a couple of things that I don't do in lower crime areas. So in higher crime areas, I'll install security systems and I will also cage my AC condensers because those can be stolen. So crime, is just another metric that you really want to be looking at to understand this location. And, some of my rental properties are in high crime. Most of mine are in 2 to 3 times the national crime average, and some of them are even 5x the national crime average. And what the cool thing about VestMap is, I tell you, oh hey, it's 3 times the national average on crime. Well, it doesn't really mean anything to you. So the great thing about VestMap is you have this anchor address where you can set an address that you know what it feels like to be there at night, you know what it's like, and then you can compare that to this location in terms of crime so that you don't see a crime score in a vacuum.
Right. Expansion. This is, along with income, one of the most important ones you look at, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm looking for at least a stable population, but ideally a growing population. A growing population is correlated with a growing demand, and is correlated with an increase in rental prices, an increase in housing prices. So I definitely want to be investing in areas that are at least stable, but they could be growing. But this is why I do not invest in Cleveland.
Right. Okay, rent.
Yeah, so, there's going to be the market rent for like this area that you're investing in. And you really need to understand what that median rent is. I'm usually able with a nice finish to push like 25 to $50 more than the median rent per month, and that's it. So, you need to understand what is that median rent and what does it mean for your strategy and does it work with your strategy? And so this is just a quick way to see, okay, what is the average? What is the median? And is it going to align with my strategy?
Right. And your concept that you talk a lot about is when you're doing renovations, doing like if there's ROI or not. If you're not going to be able to charge extra rent for what you're putting in, then you probably shouldn't invest in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can understand that by just knowing rent that rent level.
And finally, neighborhood.
Yeah, so you can basically piggyback on, these big national chains, Starbucks, Walmart, Whole Foods, they're not just randomly plopping down these stores, right? They're doing a lot of research to understand, where their target clients are and where their stores will be successful. And so by mapping all of these store locations, we can get that insight too. And one of my tests that I like to look at is what's closer. Is it a Starbucks or is it a Dollar Tree?
Right.
Now, it's again, it's neither good nor bad. It just is, and you just have to understand, okay, what does that mean for the neighborhood? What does that mean for the tenant base?
Right. So VestMap makes running discern reports really easily. So you can put in any address and get a report that's going to give you those 7 key reports. So we actually want to demo that for you and show you what it actually looks like. So we have an address pulled up here, and this is an address that you actually own, right, Lee?
Yeah, I own that address. It is a fourplex in Liberty, Missouri, which is north of the river in Kansas City, if you know the market. But if anyone listened to my Bigger Pockets podcast, I actually talked about this. It's the deal that I found from a guy on Craigslist. But yeah, that's it. When I bought it, it was not blue anymore. It had already been painted. The guy's wife was like, "Yeah, that color was I don't know what he was thinking." But so if you scroll down, you can see the demographic group. You can click on any of those are hyperlinks, so then you can read about that group and kind of understand, okay, who are the people who live there, and
They
just
give you a
just
whole breakdown.
understanding it, like what's their occupation, and all that just gives you like a lot of insight into that area.
And
And
also
then
areas
yeah,
around it, right?
yeah, and the areas around it as well, so you can kind of understand what's around. And it's really really powerful. So yeah, north of the river tends to have fairly high incomes. You'll see here, this is like a lower priced area, or a lower income area in like a higher income area, I guess. And so you're going to have people, there's going to be demand for this because it's more affordable than just the adjacent areas. So anyway, I like that. I think it works. I'm big on affordable housing.
Right.
Um, yeah, so Then you can see the school ratings. That this is like really what I target, kind of middle of the road, not, not one or two, but,
Right.
5 to 7, perfect. You
And
can
it
kind of
gives
see the
you a good
schools
like
around there.
glanceable score there.
Yeah.
Crime quite
Um, Yeah, so this is actually a fairly low crime area. Most of my rental properties have higher crime than this. But you can see that we have an anchor address set, which is another rental property that I own. You can see that it just tells you what the crime score is on the anchor and then what it is here. So this is a kind of a low crime area. So that's good to know. And yeah, and then scroll down in that legend, Clay. Yeah. So this kind of shows you, the annual forecasted population growth. And I really like to look at this, and it gives you some reference points, for, the zip code and the tract of which we talked
right.
about earlier. And then just in terms of like what's the national average, what is the county, so there's obviously a lot of growth up here. So yeah, I think that's positive.
Cool.
And then yeah, these are actually one bedroom rentals, and I charge 750 for them. So you can see that
Less load median.
actually I might charge 795. Maybe some are 795 and some are 750. Anyway, they you can see that what I charge is coming up here. And then, so that's great, just like a ballpark. If I just want to quickly analyze this property, right? Like when I was looking at it, I would know, okay, if I do a nice finish, maybe I can get 750 on all the units, right? And then this is kind of a residential area, so there's not a ton of stores around it. But then if you go to the west, you can see that there's a couple of Starbucks, there's Dollar General. So
Yeah, very cool. So it gives you a very quick, glanceable look at a potential property so that you really only have to search one place rather than going to lots of different places. So let's go back. So in terms of actually finding these properties, this is another one that we get asked a lot, right? People ask you all the time about sourcing properties. Do you want to talk about this a little bit?
yeah, people say, oh, there's where do I get deals from? How do you get deals? That kind of thing. And there's not actually that many different sources of real estate deals. I mean, the big one is going to be real estate agents. The MLS, those are also available like on something like Redfin, which is just pulling MLS data. So if you're not familiar with it, MLS is just the local place where all the real estate agents put the listings so that everyone can see them. And I think a lot of times people say, oh, like there's no good deals on the MLS, like I need off market deals. And that's fine. You can go find off market deals. But the thing that I always tell people is the skill is not finding off market deals, it's understanding when a deal is a deal worth buying for you. And those exist through agents. They exist on the market. Like I have bought lots of deals that are actually on the market, and a lot of times things that are off market are higher priced than things that are on market because they're not beaten up by the market. So anyway, I don't want to go too much into this, but so basically there's agents who are pulling from the MLS. Then there's off market deals. You could get them off Craigslist. Like I got that property off Craigslist. You could get them from a wholesaler, or you could be direct to seller doing like direct marketing. But always, if you're just starting out, I would always recommend buying your first one with a real estate agent.
And this is a funny one that as we were kind of going through and making this slide, you said this one to me, Lee. So I was like, we got to make this into a slide. If you tell me you want zero crime, perfect schools and high income, your house is in Beverly Hills. I wanted to show everyone on this, what the real numbers are for your rental properties. Again, they're not perfect. 2 to 3x the national crime rate, median incomes 28 to 35, middle of the road schools, rents and cash 50, 150 to 250 upon stabilization. So not the crazy highest cash, but it is positive, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to say about picking properties or
Yeah,
selection?
I think Yeah, I just think sometimes, people want like, oh, I couldn't buy an area that has any crime, or I need the best schools, or, and you're going to, if you start buying in those perfect areas, then you are going to be in just, these A class neighborhoods where it's really, really expensive
Somebody turn
to,
the lights off on you.
yeah, well, they're actually on auto timer.
Oh, there they go.
Yeah, I just had to move a little bit.
That's okay. Okay, perfect. Let's keep going. So a shortcut to success. So basically, real estate investing is about action and momentum. You need to be out there actually buying properties, right? You're not getting rich just analyzing properties. So you can use the discern method we just laid out for you 100% for free. Or you can save hundreds of hours sifting through many different data sources and use VestMap to run your discern reports. You were just telling me about how it used to take you 30 minutes to vet one location, and now you can do 30 properties in the same time. And I feel like that must help you create a better portfolio and find more of those deals that you were talking about if you're
Yeah,
analyzing.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. And if you're about to drop hundreds of thousands or possibly millions of dollars on a property, you really need to do your due diligence. So we do have a special launch offer to celebrate the launch of VestMap, which has been a long time coming. We have two offers available. The first is VestMap Pro, which comes with 20 searches a month. That's 10 bonus searches every single month, and you'll get unlimited access to the B-class rental property map that we showed you, solid gold to target and identify your zips. Then we also have, if you're sourcing more properties, a plan that offers 150 searches a month. And the big one, this one is the first 10 people to buy this will actually get a one-on-one call with myself and Lee and our team to go over anything you want, to look at your next deal, to identify a new property, have us look at what you're actually running. Happy to do all of that with you. And of course, unlimited access to the B-class rental property map. If you go to vestmap.com, you will not see these plans. These are only available for folks that are on this webinar. And if you do sign up for these plans, you are locked in forever. We're going to give you those bonus searches for life. So the other thing that we offer is custom maps. And for those on this webinar, it's the B-class rental map that we showed you, but you can change it to have any criteria you want. And the clients that have used this so far have just absolutely loved it. We just have 5 available because these are one-on-one, totally custom solutions. Usually that's $4,000, but for those on this webinar, we're knocking $1,000 off and also throwing in a free year of VestMap Premier, which is a $600 value. So do you want to say anything else about custom mapping, Lee? Who it might be good for?
Yeah, I mean, this is really, really powerful. You can imagine being able to target exactly the zip codes that have your criteria, or really anything, anything that you're into. You could say, "Oh, I only want tertiary markets that are this far from an airport." Like we can build that for you. So, just being able to identify new markets, this has been really, really powerful for me. I'm entering a new market, and I did it. I used the B class rental properties. Like I used it to pick my market.
Yeah.
So, and then I use it to then target those zip codes within a market. So it's great. Like you can go to, um, you know, like an agent and say, oh, okay, these are like my 30 zip codes that I would
Right.
buy in.
My
Or
own
you can just,
on
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So we do have that available. So these are live now. You can go and visit. It's vestmap.com/launch.